Hello, can you please tell me your name and what Woodford arrangement you invested into?
My name is Julian Mark Rogers, and I invested in the Woodford Equity Income Fund Class Z accumulation.
Thank you, very precise. Why have you agreed, Mark, to have this conversation with me and for it to be recorded and put out there on social media and so on?
My overwhelming feeling about the Woodford Fund is that it was badly managed, it was badly overseen, and the FCA appeared to have failed in their regulatory functions, and the consumer really is being badly let down by them. And I think this needs to be out in the public domain.
Thank you. Who is your MP, and can we send a link to the recording of this conversation to him or her?
My MP is Bob Seeley on the Isle of Wight, and yes, you may send a copy of this recording to him.
Thank you. Why did you choose to invest into a Woodford fund?
He was a very well-known name, and I invested through Hargreaves Lansdown, and he was promoted quite heavily to their Wealth 100 fund, and that was really why we chose that fund. So my wife and I both invested in the fund.
My next question was about which platform. You've already answered that, Hargreaves Lansdown. Mark, when you invested, what, if anything, was your understanding of your statutory protections through the Financial Ombudsman Service and the Financial Services Compensation Scheme?
My understanding was that if a company went bust, or if there was fraud, or if there was maladministration leading to them going bankrupt, then the consumer would be protected through those organizations and could seek redress through them.
How has the Woodford scandal affected you?
I think I would say it's rather undermined my confidence in the regulatory environment, and certainly has made me very hesitant about putting money into funds, fearing that, of course, we could have another similar episode on our hands, and obviously further financial losses, which at our age in the late 60s is not something that one can really recover from in any reasonable period of time.
You've already touched on this, Mark, but what do you think about the way the FCA has handled matters?
They appear to be more interested in covering up what I perceive to be their failure in overseeing the Woodford Fund and overseeing Link, rather than actually making sure that the investors are actually treated correctly and fairly. So my view is that it's more to do with reputational preservation rather than consumer protection.
The FCA has made reference to 77p in the pound, and the press has picked up on that. There's been quite a bit of media coverage about it that you may have seen. What are your thoughts about this 77p in the pound matter?
I've checked through our investments and the distributions we've had so far, and my calculations suggest that we are getting back more than 77p in the pound. However, I may be wrong in that, but if it applies to generally, then I think that's a pretty poor return on the investment.
Thank you, Mark. What do you think about the proposed scheme of arrangement?
It seems to be very unfair, really, in that my understanding is that the large institutions who obviously had a lot of money invested have a much not so much control, but their contribution to the vote and hence to the high percentage of acceptance seems to outweigh the small retail investor like myself, where our funds may be relatively modest, and therefore, in terms of achieving the necessary percentage of fund approval, we failed to make the grade. So I think it's heavily weighted towards institutions, and I think it's really, in addition to that, voting seemed to be extremely difficult. I had quite a lot of trouble, and I know a lot of other people also had trouble and probably didn't vote at all.
Mark, thank you. And your final question, sir, is what, if anything else, would you like to say?
Well, I think I'd like to thank TTF for actually helping the retail investors actually try to hold the authorities to account. And I think without the TTF, essentially this would be the whole thing would have been passed through without a murmur of dissent. And really any changes in the regulatory framework and the way in which retail investors are protected will continue to fail.
It's very, very kind of you to say so, Mark. Thank you very much indeed. That brings our conversation to a close. I really appreciate your time today, Mark. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.